What's up, listeners? It's Andrea. Today, it's Captain Picard Day. Nobody told us there'd be consequences. And we asked the question, okay, why can't Starfleet have cloaking technology? Come on.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
Hey, I'm your co-host, Andrea. Shereese, today we are talking Season 7, Episode 12, The Pegasus.
So
Wait,
exciting.
this is totally the wrong universe.
But the song still works.
I mean, it's adventure, right? Like, okay, this episode was written by Ronald D. Moore and directed by LeVar Burton.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Is this his debut for the show?
I believe this is LeVar Burton's directorial debut. I have to go back and double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's the first time. And I'm just super excited that I was like, you go, LeVar, like, look at you. And also major props to this show for creating such a tight sense of community within like the working sphere that the actors have opportunities to direct. Like that is very, very uncommon. I don't know much about show business, but I have heard from like multiple different people that like if you're an actor on the show, even if you so much as suggest lines like, oh, my character probably would say this, or my character would probably never say this, the writers can get really pissy about it. The directors can get really angry about it, like stuff like that, where there are like lines you just sort of don't cross from what I understand. So for actors to have the opportunity to direct episodes, that's huge. Like TNG as a working set must have been like a really tight knit family. I feel like.
I heard LeVar Burton on a interview, and he was talking about his wedding, and I mean he was talking about his career and things like that, but he was talking about his wedding, and on his wedding day he said that like Jonathan Frakes and Brent Spiner and Sir Patrick Stewart, they were all in his wedding, like in his wedding party.
Oh, like
and
okay, totally
they were his
family.
groomsmen. Yeah. So it's like and the guy he was talking to has no idea who any of these people are. So as he was saying the names, the guy was just like, oh, that's great. And I was just like, oh, this is such a missed opportunity. Get him out of that chair. Put me in it.
Absolutely the wrong person to interview, LeVar
Absolutely
Burton.
The wrong person. 1,000%. It's like me interviewing any sports person.
Yeah, it's like
it is a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, did you do a slam dunk? Oh, it's football. So what is that? A touchdown? I don't know.
Did you do a slam ball? Is that what it's called? Yeah, it's like wasted. But anyways, like so yeah, they were. That makes me think that they were actually close from spending so much time together for so many years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did not know that about that he directed this episode, but it was beautifully done. So well done, sir.
It was beautifully done. So here's the plot of the Pegasus. When Riker's very first commanding officer comes aboard to aid in the search for a vessel they served on, Riker is forced to rethink the actions he took at that time. So what are your initial thoughts on this episode?
What I wrote in my notes is this is one of my all-time favorite episodes.
Was it all caps?
Yes.
Okay,
I knew. I was like,
which is why I read it that way. Yeah, I was like, that's why she's reading it like that. That's
why. Yep. I'm not having a stroke. It's all in caps. And then I'm so excited to get into this one. That's all I wrote. What did you write for your initial thoughts?
In all caps, I wrote, I love this one. And then in regular caps, I wrote this one has everything. It's the best of season 7 by far for me.
Oh yes, 100%.
And like this is again one of my like 25 top 10 episodes. Like I just think it's such a rad episode. The premise is so freaking cool. There are stakes that are introduced just at the right time where it's like now things are like
tangible, meaningful.
Yes, time contingent to get us out of here, and we've got to like think outside the box. Like it's really, really cool. And then girl, as a delightful bonus as we just jump right in, it's Captain Picard Day. I didn't know it was in this episode.
I literally felt like it was a real holiday when it opened and you just see the big banner behind Picard saying Captain Picard Day. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Captain Picard Day. And I honestly didn't realize that Captain Picard Day didn't happen until this late in the Trek universe, not until season 7, episode 12. I could have sworn Captain Picard Day was like in season 1, episode 2 or something.
Captain Picard Day is such a small little thing that like any TNG super nerd will immediately understand. But it just feels like such a canon event that you're like, no, this like happens every season, right? Like every season, like it's kind of like Easter, like it's the same sort of day every year or whatever, right? Where it's like, this happens once a year. No, like I didn't know. I totally forgot that this was in this episode. I'm with you. I thought Captain Picard Day happened way earlier. By the way, how freaking adorable is Riker with that little model of Picard, and he's like imitating
with a little Picard doll.
Yeah, and he's calling him like number one, and then he like puts him under his arm and like goes to be on the bridge, and Troy's like, Will. He brings it back.
Yeah, this whole scene is just hilarious. Like, and Riker's just like, I think it's great. I think it's wonderful doing the Picard voice. And Picard's just like, isn't there somewhere you should be? Don't you have a job to do? This is the first time, by the way, that statement has ever been said to anyone on the ship.
Yeah.
the first time and the last time.
Well, you know what I also thought too, we both thought that Captain Picard Day happened a lot sooner than season 7, but I feel like season 7 is a great time for it to happen because if really had happened like at season 1,
it would be weird because he wasn't great.
Picard season would be like, that's preposterous. I'm not doing that. For children, I don't even want children on my ship. The end, right? Like now it's like he's more reluctant, but he's not reluctant because of the kids. He's reluctant because he's the center of attention.
Right, because of the hero worship.
Yes. And so he's like, oh, do I really have to like pick a winner? And Troy is being a very good counselor. She's like, you need to pick 3 winners and like 4 honorable mentions. And he's like, oh God. Like, I just think it shows like how close the team is now that Riker feels comfortable imitating Picard's accent.
Right. And that Picard's just like, get out of here. But it wasn't anything like totally inappropriate and so off this, it was just like friends having fun. And I loved that. I loved that. And just seeing all the little like drawings on the table and stuff. And Troy's explaining to Picard, you're a role model. These kids, because he was like, why does it have to be me? Oh, why do we even have to do this? And Troy's like, you're the captain. You're a role model. Kids look up to you. This is something they look forward to every year. The kids get so excited because Picard was like, didn't the teachers agree to stop doing this? And she was like, no, this is their favorite activity. They're going to keep doing this forever. Yeah. And so Picard is just like, oh, fine, whatever. Which I also just love. He picks up this picture at one point where it's like Picard standing on top of the entire Earth. And he was like, I think these kids have like an exaggerated sense of my abilities or whatever. Like, could just stand on the whole Earth. And it's just really cute.
It is adorable.
So he gets calmed from Worf on the bridge saying that there's an admiral who wants to talk to him. It's priority one. Super secret, top emergency or whatever. So Troy excuses herself from the room so he can have this conversation. And the admiral is like, you need to rendezvous with the crazy horse and leave immediately. Exceed all warp limitations. Get there right now. And I can't tell you what it is, but there's somebody on the ship who can tell you all about it in person. And it's like, wow, this got really serious and scary all of a sudden.
Really fast.
But before she leaves, she goes, Captain Picard Day? Because she can see the giant banner behind him.
Huge banner.
And I love Picard's response.
I guess I'm something of a role model. I don't know. Like,
and she's like, I'm sure you are. And just hangs up. And he's like, it just feels so stupid. And I love that because how often do we get to see Picard just feeling stupid for something kind of silly?
I know. Well, I do love those episodes where like an admiral will, kind of put Picard in his place. Not because I think that it's warranted, because Picard is perfect and never does anything wrong ever. Okay. But I mean, that might be a touch exaggerated, but because he is in charge of everyone, like his role supersedes like anybody's rank, like on the ship. He is Mr. in charge. So when somebody else takes charge over him, you're like, ooh, that's like a cool dynamic shift of like the power balance, which I thought was like really neat. Yeah. So Vice Admiral Blackwell is like, he's coming on board. Meet with him. He's got a whole plan. So Riker and Picard walk over to the transporter room, and Riker is shocked that the person who beams aboard is Admiral Pressman. He was Will's first commanding officer on the Pegasus. And Pressman says she's still out there, Will, and the Romulans have found her. And then it like cuts to credits. It's like, uh-oh. Now we've got Romulans too?
Yeah. So one thing before we get into stuff that's like actually matters is that in the hallway while they're walking, Picard's like, you know what? I've decided that we're going to arrange a Commander Riker Day next month.
Oh, that's right.
And Riker's like, oh. And he's like, yeah. And I actually am considering putting in my own entry, which is like, what exactly is he going to make to celebrate Riker Day? I really want to see this. Is it going to be a sculpture? Is it going to be painting? Like, what are we doing, Picard? And then Riker's just like, oh, great. As they walk into the transporter room. And I honestly want to see Commander Riker Day. Not because I want to see Commander Riker Day, but I really want to see what Picard's going to make.
Yeah.
And also, like, to your point of just they're so comfortable with each other that Riker can kind of tease Picard. Picard can kind of tease Riker. And it's just all in good fun, which is so great. But yeah, so he sees his old, captain, who's now an admiral. And he says, like, he's like, good to see you, sir, or something like that. And Pressman is just like, really? Why do you look like you've just seen a ghost or something? He says, where you can just see in Riker's face, he is not at all pleased to see him. He is shocked. He is horrified. He's trying to be like, not good. He's trying to be like, oh, Captain Picard, Admiral Pressman, but like he's very thrown and very uncomfortable. And then it cuts to commercial and you're like, what's going on? Which already I'm so pulled in. I'm so pulled in. Totally so engaged.
Totally. Especially the way Pressman kind of very knowingly leans into Riker to be like, the Romulans have found her. And Riker's like, oh no. So it's like, okay, there are unknown elements to the story that Pressman and Riker are privy to, and we are not. And we better find out, why are these stakes so high? Why is it so important the Romulans find her? So we found out that the Pegasus was lost 12 years ago, along with most of the crew. There was some kind of warp core breach. Only Captain Pressman, Riker, who was just like an ensign, and 7 others survived. And that's it. Out of the entire ship, 9 people.
Which is crazy. And we don't know how many people are on the ship because sometimes the ships have like a crew complement of like 300 people. Sometimes it's like 100 people. So it's not necessarily the 1,000 people that are on the flagship of the Enterprise. However, for 9 people to survive, it sounds insane for any size ridiculous. Ship. Like that's like the size of a shuttle. Like which is what it was. It was like, these are the people who got away on the escape pods. Yeah. But like, you're like, oh my God, the entire ship, the entire crew was lost and no debris was ever found. So they just assumed that the whole thing blew up so thoroughly that there wasn't even a scrap of metal left. It was floating just in particles.
Space. Yeah. Which is absolutely crazy. Because like anytime we've seen a starship explode on Star Trek, there's always like a debris field. Right?
There's always chunks of it, but
something.
Not all of their, but it also makes sense because not all of their weapons leave a trace. When poor Yuta was destroyed by Riker's phaser, she dissolved into less than ash.
Should have made better Parthas.
She sure should have. There wasn't even a little pile of ash. I mean, she just was non-existent.
Yeah.
So
no, you're totally right.
So they do have weapons that can thoroughly disintegrate, atomize something. Yeah. But yeah, so you're like, okay, wow, the ship like just that's crazy.
Like freaking disintegrated, yeah.
But then they go, but 3 days ago, the Romulan warbird found some debris that was from the ship. So now they're like, oh wait, so the ship didn't disintegrate 12 years ago? What? And what was on the ship? And what's going on?
Why is it so important? Yeah. So what he says is 3 days ago, Starfleet intelligence they have embedded in the Romulan High Command found a piece of debris in the Devlin system, another super freaking cool name, that matches the Pegasus. And it had these like new weapons and technology. So we need to retrieve that ship. It's a salvage or destroy it type of thing because we can't have that technology land in Romulan hands. Now, here's my thing. It was brand new technology from 12 years ago, really? Like by now it's completely freaking obsolete.
Which is what Geordi says. Geordi's just like, why would anybody want, or maybe it was Worf, but one of them is just like, why would anybody want
technology?
A 12-year-old ship? Yeah.
Like a 12-year-old iPhone is completely obsolete now. Can't even make a phone call on it anymore.
A 12-year-old computer won't even turn on.
No.
It won't even start. It's going to be like, I've had my turn.
Yeah. And so, Pressman is like, I don't know how to answer that or whatever.
He says it was a prototype ship and it had a lot of experimental components. He says, in fact, some of the experimental components on that ship were used to design and build the Enterprise, meaning that whatever proprietary technology is on the ship is still relevant today, even though the ship is 12 years old. And you're like, okay, fair. There was some stuff on there that's super, top secret or still relevant today. All right. But like, I don't know. Do we want to get in a firefight with the Romulans? We'll see. But he does say, rescue it if we can, destroy it if we can't. So, okay, cool. That sounds like a plan.
Now, they head to the Devlin system, and the Romulans are out there, and they decloak. And I do love, again, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, I love seeing Picard play the diplomat with potential enemies, where the Romulans are like, I am so-and-so, what are you doing out here? And Picard's like, well, I'm Captain Picard of the Federation, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing out here? And they're like, oh, well, we're out here doing a spectrum analysis on some gaseous anomalies. And I love Picard goes, how interesting. That's what we're doing. Maybe we should compare notes, right?
Maybe we should share data.
Yeah, and the Romulan is like, I doubt that our
aims are compatible.
Yeah, and Picard goes, perhaps you're right. Why don't we just all stick to our own side of the asteroid belt or whatever, right? Like, you stay over there, we'll stay over here, right? So, which I just thought that's so great, because I would have been like, Romulans, what are you doing out here? And why are you following us? But see, this is why I could never be a diplomat, because I don't have any diplomacy in me. Picard is perfect for this.
And the Romulans have been here for a couple days. So if anything, the Enterprise is following them. But yeah, I absolutely love this whole exchange between Commander Cyril and Picard, because it's so pleasant, and you could just feel the veiled threats underneath every single word. But the words themselves are just so pleasant, so polite. We're all good buddies here, just on a
everybody's cool
exploration. Yeah, it was great. So as soon as the screen goes dark, Picard's like, okay, how long is it going to take for us to search this sector? And they say it'll take 7 days. But the Romulans have a 2-day head start. So they're like, all right, get started. And then Data's like, all right, scanning sector 001. Let's go.
Really? Okay, you don't want to start at sector 099 and work your way down or something? Like, because if the Romulans have started from 001 up, they haven't found it yet. That's why they're still looking.
But they're not going to have the same 001.
I mean, I know that, Shereese. I'm just saying.
They already scanned 001 to 0027. Let's just start 028.
Yeah. Well, let's start from sector 1000 and work our way down. Okay. So it's like, we're more likely anyway. So we've got this nice little scene in 10 Forward where Riker and Pressman are sort of like reliving the old times. And, Pressman's like, so you grew out a beard, and Riker's like, yeah, I got sick of people telling me how young I looked. And he's like, oh, what was that guy on the Pegasus who used to what did he call you again? And Riker says, Ensign Babyface, which I was like, first of all, that is hilarious. And second of all, that's really not a super creative insult, but like, okay, whatever.
It's not, but it is really fitting, because if you remember back to Farpoint Station and how Riker looked in that episode, Ensign Babyface would cover it. He looked so much younger without that beard.
Yeah. Now Pressman says something that really, really shows like a Riker that we did not know, where he goes, you never did have a sense of humor. And I was like, what? Like Riker is basically, what was that stupid effing episode in season 1? The Outrageous Okona, something like that, where like that guy was like a scampy rascal smuggler. Like Riker is basically that guy, but on the right side of the law. You know what I mean? Where it's like
less douchey.
He is totally like a lighthearted, humorous, flirtatious.
He's the one trying to throw Worf a surprise party.
Yeah.
Telling him he hates surprise parties, and then telling him he loves surprise parties.
Yeah. He's
so totally
it's like, what do you mean he never had a sense of humor? Yeah. So it's like, okay, I guess Pressman knew a Riker we never knew. And Riker was like, well, what about the experiment? Do you think we're going to find it? And like Riker does have some doubts about the last day on the Pegasus and whether they did the right thing. And he seems to be struggling with a lot of guilt. But none of it is explained. So like we don't know. All we know is that his conscience is kind of like eating him alive about this.
He's feeling a lot of regret, but Pressman is not. Pressman is very much like, we did the right thing. We did the only thing we could do. We didn't do anything wrong. You don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to worry about anything. This is exciting times. This is a second chance. Like,
so on today's episode of How to Spot a Narcissist, this is it right here. Like, no guilt, no remorse, no regret. He did everything right. Everybody else did everything wrong. It's like,
but at this point in the episode,
we don't know.
He could be absolutely, both things could be true. Maybe they didn't do anything wrong and Riker's feeling guilty for no reason.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Could be. Turns out not so much, but that's later on. Pressman's like, don't worry. It won't be like 12 years ago. And this time no one's going to stop us. And I was like, okay, time out. What the hell is going on here? And no one's going to stop us.
And then to add on to the no one's going to stop us, he also says, all right, listen, you have orders like the chief, I don't know, the secret office, the head secret officer or whatever, intelligence agency, some head secret person in Starfleet, some admiral is like behind all of this and is like.
Do you think that's what it says on their nameplate on their desk? Head secret person.
I feel like it shouldn't, because it kind of gives away that they're the secret person. But who knows?
Starfleet intelligence head. Yeah,
who knows what they do? And so he says that Admiral Rayner, he says Admiral Rayner has given her full support, and she's given personal orders to you, and you are under orders to not reveal them to anyone, including Captain Picard.
I don't like this at all.
Right. So now this adds on first it's the no one's going to stop us. And then this added layer of you have to keep this secret even from Picard. And you just see Riker's whole body language change where he's like, I am not comfortable with this. I do not keep secrets from my crew. I don't keep secrets from my captain. We all work together here. That's what makes this work. And so now Riker's in this really sticky situation where he's doing something that he already feels iffy about. And he has to keep it all a secret. So he basically kind of has to lie to everybody. Or if they ask him any direct questions, he has to just be like, I cannot comment. Or something like that, which is just going to break trust. So at this point in the episode, you're like, what are they talking about? So engaged, right? Like, this is a great story.
Yeah, no, this is like, there's a lot of mystery in this episode where you're like, okay, I know Riker. I love and trust Riker. Okay. This guy, he's given me some heebie-jeebies. I got to be honest. Like he's given me a lot of like sketchy dude vibes. So not super loving what's happening here, but he seems very, very sure of himself. And if Riker is feeling uneasy about their mission, that tells me something sketchy is happening. You know what I mean? Like where it's like, this is not looking good. Now, Pressman does go to Picard's quarters. They have a drink. They kind of talk like mano a mano. And did you notice the super cool asteroids like floating outside the windows of his quarters?
Yes, the whole episode, every time they showed the asteroid field, I was like, that is so beautiful. And it's just like brown rocks in space, but they're like lava rocks, but so pretty. Oh my gosh. Every time they showed them, I was like, ooh, almost as enamored as I am when I see a nebula. And I guess that's because it was like a different texture than we usually see in space. It's not just like spacey and glowy. It's like a physical thing, but it's got these, it just looks so amazing. So every time they showed it
and all that. Yeah, it was super cool. Now Picard fills Pressman in on why he chose Riker to be his first officer. And Pressman's like, you didn't even meet him before Farpoint Station?
Which I didn't know.
No, which I didn't know either. I was like, oh, cool. So Riker's name had been in a stack of like 50 other names of like highly qualified people to be first officer. But Picard said he was ready to like throw his resume on the stack. Yeah. He's like, I was going to throw his name like on the rest of the stack, like all the others. But then I realized like he disobeyed a direct order and risked a court-martial to ensure the safety of the captain and its crew on this other ship that he served on. And that's when I knew I needed someone who wouldn't just blindly follow my orders, but really would like look out for the ship and the crew. And the mission. Yeah. And the mission. And captains, because they are in charge, tend to have like, sometimes can get like an inflated sense of self and importance. Right. And so they think that their decision is always the right decision and you have to follow it blindly. And like Riker was not about that life. And that's why Picard was like, I want someone to be able to question my decisions from time to time if I'm not making the right one. And Pressman, I feel like belongs in the same support group as Captain Jellicoe, because he's like, no, I want my first officer to blindly follow my orders no matter what. And it was like, no, dude, come on, man. Have you met Jellicoe? You guys would be like besties.
I completely agree with you. I totally felt like he went to the same school of training as Jellicoe because and it's not, I mean, he had a little more nuance. Jellicoe just felt like my way or the highway, but also they were like in a really high stress situation. So maybe he would have been different in different scenarios, but I don't think so. But Pressman, he goes a little bit deeper where he says, I need somebody who has faith in the captain's judgment. You don't always have time to take a poll or to do, to all sit around and have a conversation. Sometimes there's a stressful, tense, crazy, dangerous situation, and you just need to follow orders and you just need to do what you're told so that everybody can survive, right? Yeah. So in his mind, he's like, I need someone who's loyal and who's obedient because that's going to save us. But really, to your point, what he's saying is, I'm going to save us. My ways are always the right way. So I need somebody who just backs me up no matter what I say. Yeah. And Picard has the humility to know his way is not always the best way. His way is not always the only way. And he only has one point of view. So I completely agree. This whole conversation I loved because I was like, this just so beautifully shows their leadership style. It also shows the evolution of Riker. Yeah. Because Pressman's Riker was a yes man who would do anything you say without question, which literally Pressman said, I want somebody who will not question me. Right. And Picard says, I want somebody who will question me. So interesting.
Which I'm like, Picard, listen, if there are any vacancies, I'm your man. Like, and Pressman, if there's any vacancies, feel free to just pass my name over the pile. Okay. Like, I don't want anything to do with that douchebag.
How'd you even get my name?
Yeah. I didn't even apply for this gig. Yeah. Now, Riker comes into sickbay with a broken rib. He and Worf were practicing some batleth movements. And thank God it was with like sticks and not actual batleths, because his ass would have been dead. But he ended up breaking a rib. And Beverly, of course, heals the broken rib in like 1 second, but Riker is really kicking himself. And he's like, I messed up at a crucial moment. I could have died. And Beverly's like, dude, you made a mistake. Like, no harm done. You'll be better next time. And he's like, maybe, and just like kind of leaves. And like, he's obviously, I think this whole scene is just to show like he's clearly struggling with stuff. You know, when you see, like, you and I have both been teachers for a lot of years, like when you see a student who like, they break a pencil and they have this huge explosion of a reaction. You're like, okay, this is not about the pencil. Like, what else is going on here? I think all of this was just to kind of show like Riker's conscience is not letting him off the hook for whatever he feels responsible for.
What a beautifully done scene. Like,
also, he didn't even thank Dr. Crusher. He just was like, I guess, and like walked out. I was like, excuse me, you just fixed your rib and your rib pain in like a hot second. And let me tell you, I will tell you, side story. My dog and I were skating on the Strand. She got startled by something and jumped in front of the board when we were going like 25 miles an hour on the skateboard. So I hit the ground so hard. And like, I have road rash on my arms and I jacked up my shoulder and my chest wall has been bruised for like 10 days now. And like, it hurts to like sit down or stand up or lay down or roll over or do anything.
Which are all the things that you can do.
Which are all the things I can do, especially like at nighttime when I'm trying to go to sleep, right? And I'm like, I would kill to have Beverly be like, okay, fixed. I would kill to have that happen.
Yeah, but that could also just show his state of mind, that he's not himself, right? He's stuck in this little bubble of self-hatred, self-loathing, and regret that he can't even see like, oh shoot, thanks, Beverly. And Worf, we were just training. And he probably didn't say anything to Worf either. He probably just got hurt and then just turned around and stormed out.
Yeah,
he probably wasn't like, and I think this was just such a beautifully done scene because it shows us his state of mind. It's like a show don't tell moment. It shows us his state of mind without him going to Counselor Troy and being like, I'm just feeling really, really conflicted about the past. Instead of him saying it, you just see it. And this was really well done. Next thing we know is we're on the bridge and Geordi is finding signs of the ship inside of an asteroid. But they linger a little bit too long in front of this asteroid. Yep. So the warbird gets suspicious and starts heading straight for them. So now they're like, okay, what do we do? Because we have found the ship. We know it's in this asteroid. But if we stay like another 60 seconds, the warbird's going to be here and they're going to know it too. And then this is going to be so messy. So the one option is for them to run away, which would be a stupid option. Another option would be for them to be like, we found it, and then get in a big firefight. And so that's also not really the way you want to go. And so Riker suggests, because Picard says, how long will it take to find the exact location of the ship inside of this asteroid, which is big enough for it to have floated in. And they said it's going to take 6 hours. And at this moment, they have like 60 seconds before the Romulans are there. So Riker says, I have a suggestion. We should destroy the asteroid. That's going to ensure that nobody gets it, right? That's the only way to be sure that the Romulans cannot get that ship.
I love how quickly Riker was like, let's just destroy it. Pressman was like, what?
He was waiting for that option to be like the best option. And it happened very quickly. Yeah. Yes. And Admiral Pressman was very against that. And he was like, Picard, can you give me a third option? And Picard's like, well, yeah, maybe we could flood it with these verteron particles that could kind of mask it. And Data's like, but those aren't naturally occurring, but we could flood it with ionizing particles. And because there's so many ionizing particles in this whole asteroid field, it'll just seem like background radiation. So they're like, let's do that. They flood it, with like 3 seconds to spare. The Romulan warbird shows up. It scans the asteroid up and down, doesn't see anything. And at this point, the Enterprise has already moved away as if they didn't find anything after all. So the Romulans kind of scan for a few minutes and then they're like, okay, yeah, we didn't find anything either. So then they go back to their, quadrant 0028 or whatever. And Picard's like, okay, here's what I want. Plan a course so that way we will come back around, so our grid will come back around to this exact location tomorrow at whatever time. And then you can continue to do the scans and we can pinpoint exactly where the ship is. That should give us enough time. So they're like, cool. Picard's like, Riker, I need you to come to my room, come to my quarters later to give me some information on whatever. And he's like, okay. And then he leaves. the second the turbolift doors close, Pressman is like, Riker, I want to see you in Picard's ready room right now. And you're like, yep, somebody's in trouble.
Oh my God. Yeah. It really, like, he really reads in the riot act. Like, he brings Riker into the ready room and just rips him a new one for being so willing to destroy the asteroid and the Pegasus. And Pressman is like, don't you remember when you were all about duty and responsibility and doing anything I say, you know? And it's just like, oh God, like, this is not the same, like, yes man Riker that you knew aboard the Pegasus. This is the first officer of the Enterprise. Like, he's grown. 12 years is a long time, buddy.
Yeah, and one of the things Pressman says, because they actually have a yelling match, Riker yells back at him, and it's a whole thing, and you're like, ooh, okay, this is getting spicy. But at one point, Pressman sits down, he kind of calms down, and he says, you know, you've changed a lot, but I'd like to think that there are some things that a man shouldn't change, like his sense of duty and honor and blah, blah, blah. And Riker says, well, I like to think that those things have not changed about me. And what I thought was so interesting about this conversation is that I actually see this a ton in TV and movies. I don't know if this is real. So for our male listeners, I would love to know if this is a thing. But in TV and movies, men are always defining to other men what it means to be a man. Like here, where he says, a man shouldn't change XYZ about himself. A man should be this. A man should be that. And we as women don't do that. Or at least we don't do it like that. We're not always walking around saying, well, a woman does this. A woman says that.
Wouldn't do that.
A real woman would never change this or would always change that.
You're totally right. I never even thought of that. Yeah, we don't do that.
We don't sit around just constantly defining what womanhood means to all womankind every time we're with another woman who does something we don't like. So I just thought that was so interesting. And I was like, I don't know if this is real, you know, because I'm not a man. I don't remember observing this between men, but this feels like a guy to guy kind of thing that probably wouldn't be said in my presence. But I'm just like, I was just really like, it struck me here where he's defining to Riker, here's what it means to be a man. And he's an older man telling a younger man, like, I'm passing this wisdom on. Right. And I found that fascinating, completely fascinating. In addition, he's right. They're both right. Like honor and all of that are great qualities. But what does that look like in your life? Like, what does that look like played out is very different for these two men. What does honor and duty look like for Pressman? And what does honor and duty look like for Riker? They are the opposite actions, but for the exact same reason. So I don't know, just so interesting.
No, I think that's a really great observation. I didn't even think about that at all. But yeah, there definitely is that competing idea of what a real man would do. And Riker's like, I'd like to think I still have all of those qualities, but just because I'm not going to follow you blindly doesn't mean that I'm not a good officer. I'm not a good man. I'm not a good whatever. Now, Riker gets called to Picard to question about a mutiny that was reported aboard the Pegasus just before it was destroyed. And Picard had to pull some serious strings to get the report. It was classified by Starfleet intelligence. So look, what
and
the
quietly
hell, Will?
Buried.
Quietly buried, right? Where it's like a mutiny aboard a Federation starship. Like, I cannot believe what I'm reading. You better tell me what was going on. And Will is really reluctant to talk about it. He's like, I was 7 months out of the academy. This mutiny happened. I grabbed a phaser and I defended my captain. And there was a running firefight all the way to the escape pod, which sounds so freaking dramatic. Like,
seriously, I could picture it in my head while he was talking. Jesus, I was just like, oh my gosh.
They're running and they're shooting over their shoulders and phaser fire is going off everywhere. And about 5 minutes after leaving the ship, there was a huge explosion. And Picard isn't having any of this. And he grills Riker to high heat. It's like, you better not put the ship or crew at risk. And if you do this, I will have to reevaluate the command structure of the ship. Dismissed. Right. And when Picard pulls the dismissed card, you're like, ooh, you're in trouble now. Fuck.
Now he's in trouble again. And he was just in trouble like 2 seconds ago. But yeah, he's really between a rock and a hard place. And Picard had asked him before he got so extreme, Picard had asked him, tell me what happened on the ship. Tell me. He's like, because all the reports are vague. This one was a top secret report with mutiny and all this. He said, you've never mentioned this, Will. You've never mentioned this.
Yeah.
And then inside this report, it says further investigations should happen because it's very clear that all of the officers involved are keeping secrets and not telling the whole truth for us to get to the bottom of this. And he says, but there were no further investigations. So what secrets were you keeping? What happened? And Riker just says, I suggest you take this up with Admiral Pressman. But before he even finishes that sentence, Picard is like, I'm taking it up with you, Will. You tell me what happened. And Will's just like, I've been ordered not to. And Picard's like, fine. He's an admiral. I'm a captain. I can't overrule him. That's fine. But let me tell you something. And that's when he says, if you put anything in danger, I will reevaluate the command structure of this ship. Like, you will be off of my ship.
Yeah.
And you just see Riker's eyes getting all big. And he's just like, he's really caught between a rock and a hard place. He can't disobey Pressman. And he doesn't want to let down Picard. And it's just like, it's really tough. And so he's just like, yes, sir. And walks out. And you're like, oh, poor thing.
I mean, I think that that scene is actually really powerful because Will and Picard have gotten along from the get-go. And even when there is a conflict, it's done in a professional way. This broke my heart because Will has breached the captain's trust, who is all of our father figures, right? So he's like breached like a father figure's trust. And to the extent that Picard is considering relieving him of duty and replacing him with someone else. Like, that's when you know you fucked up real bad, right? And Riker is really, really caught between a rock and a hard place, and he is in a very, very tough position. But this scene was so good. I'm going to give you guys a listen to this, because even if you remember this episode or haven't seen it for a while or whatever, this scene is just so powerful. I want you guys to hear just with how much like emotion they say this.
The judge advocate also believes that the surviving officers are deliberately withholding vital information from this inquiry. Further investigation is recommended. Will, there was no further investigation. This report was classified and then it was quietly buried. Why?
Sir, may I suggest you take this up with Admiral...
I'm taking this up with you, Will! The judge advocate thought that you were participating in a conspiracy to cover up the truth. Now, what the hell is going on here, Will? Why did that mutiny happen? Why is Pressman so determined to find your ship 12 years later?
I've said all I can. I'm under direct orders from Admiral Pressman not to discuss this, sir.
Very well. He's an admiral, I'm a captain. I cannot force you to disobey his orders. Therefore, I will have to remain in the dark on this mission. And I will just have to trust that you will not let Pressman put this ship at unnecessary risk. And if I find that that trust has been misplaced, then I will have to reevaluate the command structure of this ship. Dismissed.
Yeah, God, could you imagine being in Riker's position? Oh my God.
It really sucks. And you know he wants to tell Picard because they don't keep secrets. Just like when Picard went on his super secret mission right before he got kidnapped, he wanted to tell Riker, but he couldn't. Yeah. And he was just like, if I could tell you more, I would. I swear I would. It's really, this is why I wouldn't be good in the military. Just because I'm not really great at following orders. Yeah, I just think I would get our country in more trouble than
Shereese,
help.
This isn't the military. We're explorers.
I would be an excellent explorer as long as I didn't have to carry phasers or have any diplomatic relations with others.
Oh no, diplomacy is my worst. It's my superpower. I'm the least diplomatic person you've ever met.
I think I'd be really great at diplomacy. I think I would make an excellent politician. I don't know if I would be super happy, but I think I'd be very skilled. So I'd be like Lwaxana Troy. Put me in like the cushiest ambassadorial roles. Do that. Let's put me like,
and I'm like, burn it all down. Oh, there are consequences to that?
Whoops.
Nobody told me there'd be consequences. Oh man.
Since when do we follow the Prime Directive? This is my first time hearing about it. I've never heard about this before. I do not recall this in the Academy.
Now, Picard actually calls up Admiral Blackwell and he's like, look, there is something very sketchy going on here. Seems to be a lot of covert whatnot going on. Like, I can't get to the bottom of this and I don't want to put my ship and my crew in danger. And Blackwell basically says, the head of Starfleet intelligence is personally watching everything unfold that you guys are doing right now. So you better just do your duty and shut the F up and finish the mission, is basically like what she kind of says.
Happy Picard Day.
Yeah. And it's like, dang, like I'm really getting nowhere here. Now on the bridge, we're back to that one asteroid and they definitely found the ship. And the only solution, because they like try to bounce around a few solutions, but they're like, no, the like electromagnetic field around the asteroid.
Like a shuttle can't go, it'll crash, and you can't transport because it's like layers and layers and layers of rock.
It's like 3 kilometers of rock deep.
They've been able to transport through before, but
yeah, it wasn't a problem on Risa, but all of a sudden here it's problem. Okay, whatever.
It wasn't a problem on Data's mom's planet when they were doing like the whole volcanic whatever.
No,
but you know what?
At all.
I'm not even gonna hold that against them because beaming through rock does seem stupid. So I'm fine. Okay, sure. So
you become more and more like Pulaski with every day that passes. You're like, this is a stupid idea. We're not.
I really do.
Nothing.
I really do, which is so funny because I never thought that before us doing this podcast. And then after episode after episode after episode of all these transporter disasters,
no,
I'm like, this is a horrible idea.
Yeah, it's only a 40% chance of success. That's really low.
Right. That's 60% chance of scrambling your atoms or ending up in some random alien prison.
Yeah.
Pass. Hard pass.
Or finding silkworms that are actually people. Like, I can't get over how stupid that fucking episode was. Yeah. So they were like the only.
Why are they silkworms? Why
were they silkworms? Dan Curry, why'd you do us like this? He was the special effects master who did all that stuff. Anyway, so the only option they have is to take the Enterprise into the asteroid fissure because they have these huge caverns and chasms and stuff. So in they go. And I don't know about you, but I really love this shot. And actually, this particular shot of the Enterprise inside the asteroid felt kind of TOS-y to me. And here's why. Because you see the like roaming searchlights of the Enterprise kind of like roaming all over the walls of the asteroid. And there's something just so old schooly about that. And I just thought it was really, really cool. I loved it. It was super cool.
I loved it. It kind of reminds me of, now that you're talking, it reminds me of like The Matrix, the first movie, when there's like forget what they're called, but the little crawly ships that are like searching for the Nebuchadnezzar. And it's like, like that's like just such like any sci-fi realm that works. The little searchlights or flashlights, like that works. I mean, it totally, because as the viewer, you're just like, where could it be? Because it's one little dot of light that you have to watch going side to side. You can't see everything. And it's a great, like, it's a great visual tool. So they see the Pegasus and it's like halfway melted into the rock and the other half is sticking out into the middle of the chasm. And you're like, what the F? How in the world is this possible?
What the hell is this?
If it smashed into it, it would be smashed, but it's not smashed. It's like embedded in the rock.
Half embedded. Yeah. It looks like the ship materialized half in the rock. It's so
which
crazy.
Is what happened. But we at this point don't know that that's even possible.
Yeah.
So they're just seeing it and they're like, what happened? What could have possibly happened? They're like, well, the ship might have just drifted into the asteroid because it had that big hole in the beginning and then just like somehow landed here. And that's why everybody thought it was
half in the rock. Yeah.
Right. And so they don't explain that part.
Yeah, no.
It's not smashed. It's fine.
Yeah, it's totally fine, except for half of it is sticking out of rock. So Pressman is like, okay, Riker and I are going to beam onto the Pegasus to retrieve this very sensitive equipment. And Picard is like, Admiral, I really would feel better having like an entire team. And he's like, no time. It's just me and Riker. Super sensitive equipment. Nobody come with us. And everybody close their eyes when you beam us on or whatever. Like, it's just kind of dumb. So
and Picard's just like, yes, sir.
Yeah. And he's very hesitant and reluctant. He's like, this job, I need a vacation. Right. So they beam aboard the Pegasus, which has had a hull breach. So a bunch of it has been exposed to space. So everything has been preserved in the vacuum of space.
Including piles and piles of bodies.
Piles of bodies that they never seem to notice even. But they do. So here is something that the Data does do. He's like, we're going to extend the ship's shields around the Pegasus so that you can like breathe and you're not.
And then we'll we'll reset life support just in engineering because they said we need to go to main engineering.
Yeah.
So they said, we'll cover that breach. We'll seal that breach with the Enterprise's force fields and we'll restore power with a power transfer. So that way there's life support, but you guys got to kind of like get in and get out.
Yes. And Riker is like, oh my God, everything has been preserved in the vacuum of space for 12 years. And he's like, how many people lost their lives being embedded in this rock? And Pressman is like, we are not here for memorial service. We're here to get a job done. And I was like, what? Wait, was there a memorial service though for these people? Because I feel like, I don't know, like maybe, maybe just like a reflective moment wouldn't have gone amiss. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I agree with you. And I also see his point of like, we've got to hurry, we've got to get the stuff. But I feel like there can be like a happy medium. You could have been unscrewing and unlatching things while saying like, yeah, it really sucks. Man, this is so horrible. Like, what a terrible tragedy. While you're unscrewing things, you could have like verbally acknowledged this horrific event. You didn't have to take a pause. You didn't have to stand for a moment of silence. You could have kept working, but you could have also acknowledged that your entire crew really died, except for 9 of you.
Yeah. And like, I will
and you're
say
now
this,
in a tomb. I mean,
you're totally in a tomb right now. Yeah. And there's like dead bodies in the chairs. There's dead bodies like laying on the ground in the hallway. There's one particular dead body that's head, like its head is face, like it's basically like back down, chest up to the air, right? But it's upside, it's like laying upside down on some stairs. So it's like head first down some stairs facing upward. And those are like, the stairs are like, it's like 3 or 4 stairs to go like down to the warp core. So it's not like a whole set of stairs, but it was blocking the entire stairway. So I'd like to know how Pressman got over that body and like stepped over this poor dead engineer to get to like this piece of equipment. I was like, what?
It's Pressman. He probably stepped on the body.
He's so heartless. I was like, damn. And Riker is like, I can't let you do this anymore. And I will say this, Jonathan Frakes does a really good self-righteous rant. He's like, it cost this people their lives. This was our fault. We're not doing this anymore. Like, he got a whole rant in. And Pressman was like, you know what, buddy? I made you and I can destroy you. And it's like, oh, okay. Now we're starting to see Pressman's true colors.
It quickly devolves. So Pressman finds the experiment, which is this really cool tube thing inside of some other cool thing. So he dismantles it and he's got the piece of equipment. So great. So great. It's all you need. Tubes and some glowy lights. And I'm sold. So he finds the experiment and he's like, cool, we can start up all the experiments again. Like, we're so close. And that's when Riker is just like, I hoped we didn't find this. I hoped it was stuck in the asteroid or something. I hoped it was destroyed. And Preston's like, what are you talking about? This is great. And Riker's like, because now I have to make a choice. You know, I was hoping this day wouldn't come, this moment wouldn't come, but it did. And here's my choice. I'm going to turn you in because what you're doing is wrong. What you did then was wrong. I was just too young and naive and stupid to know it, but I'm going to stand against this. And if I had it to do over, I would have picked up a phaser and stood with the mutineers instead of protecting you. And Pressman is just like, you know, first he tries to convince him, but then he realizes he can't. And that's when he says, I can, you know, I made you and I can break you. And he says, well, fine, you don't want to be a part of this. You don't have to be, but you're still under orders to not breathe a word about this device, anything that we're doing here. And, you know, you are ordered to keep your mouth shut. And you're just like, wow, this just got really tense. The two of them are yelling and screaming at each other. You don't know what's going on. Yeah, but you know, Riker's like, it's wrong. What you did was wrong. What we did was wrong. You cannot do this again. I cannot let you. And you're like, what are they talking about? What's going to happen?
What are you talking about? Yeah.
So as they're yelling at each other, the whole entire ship shakes. And they're like, oh, shoot, what's going on? So Pressman's like, 2 to beam back and 1 piece of equipment. So they beam back onto the Enterprise. Next thing you know, we're in the bridge. And we see this really cool shot through the view screen of just like lava, like magma sealing the opening to the asteroid. And you're like, oh, crap.
The Romulans have struck again.
The Romulans were Romulaning themselves.
They really
hard
were.
Right here.
You know, at the end of season 1, when the Romulans are like, we're back. This is what they meant. We will seal you in an asteroid fissure. Bye.
And then have a polite conversation about it, which again was great.
Captain, is there anything we can do to help you? If only you had shared your plans with us, we wouldn't have been conducting this geological experiment on this asteroid and accidentally sealed you into your doom. How unfortunate that you did not tell us what you were up to. Again, how to spot a narcissist.
It was such a great talk. And then he's like, but we can offer some assistance. And Picard's like, what did you have in mind? He says, we're going to beam you all. So they're going to beam anyways. They're going to transport through all the rock. No one cares about the danger now. And he's, you know, because it's either that or die.
All of a sudden now it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah. It's either that or just, you know, stay in the asteroid forever. Although I feel like y'all could still send like a signal for Starfleet to come get you. Come on now, be resourceful. But in any case,
I mean, if the Pegasus's warp like signature was strong enough to like get to the Enterprise through 3 kilometers of rock, I feel like a beacon probably will do the same. Where it's like,
and also I know that they were
trapped.
Talking about
come help us.
The electromagnetic whatever could crash a shuttle, but you could still like manually pilot a shuttle out of that asteroid through some other kind of fissure and like autopilot that thing back to Starfleet and get somebody to come out and save you. But anywho,
well, the Romulans who say we can, we'll beam you
the
all
Romulans
onto
say
our
they will,
ship.
they'll beam them all over to the ship. And then they said, you'll have a brief stay at Romulus and then we'll return you to Starfleet. So the brief stay is going to give them enough time to capture not only the Pegasus, but also the Enterprise forever. So it's like, okay, thanks. we can't do that. So now they're all freaking out. Like, what are our options? And Worf, true to form, is like, let's blast our way out.
Yeah.
And Data's like, okay, about that. We are inside of basically a cave. So if you start blasting away at the cave entrance, it's just going to cause the whole cave to collapse.
Yeah.
So that's a quick way to death.
Yeah.
So let's maybe not do that.
Let's not result in a complete cave-in, okay? By just blasting our way out of stuff.
I mean, that's a good first idea. That would have been my idea too. I would have been like, let me out.
Well,
but
see,
then to be like, wait, but you could die.
My initial thought was blast as well. And here's why. Not because I'm like Worf in that where I'm like, I choose violence every time, because that's not really me. But if the Romulans blasted at the rock to like melt it and create this like closure, why don't you just use your favorite phaser set to melt and like remelt it and like open it back up? That was my thought. But it's like, Data was right there with like the plot point, information where he's like, we can't do that. So we got to think of something else. And this is where Riker steps up and he's like, I know what we can do to get out of here. There's a piece of equipment in Admiral Pressman's quarters under guard that might get us out of here. It's a prototype for a Federation cloaking device. And Pressman is like, you just ended your career, mister.
Right? Which you're like, I don't know, Pressman's whole like, I made you, I can break you thing. I just was like, Pressman, get out of here. Dude, go sit down somewhere. Go sit down.
You did not
make Riker. You did not make Riker, and you cannot break Riker. I know you think you're such a big shot because head secret lady's behind you. Yeah. But we all know who Riker is. He can't just go disappearing into Guantanamo Bay.
I'm sorry, you just said head secret lady.
Yeah, because I forgot again what she's called. But my point is
head of Starfleet intelligence.
Okay, yes. My point is you're not as powerful as you think you are. Maybe you were back in the day, but not anymore. But Riker's his own person. He's not an ensign. Get out of here.
Yes.
So so Riker's talking about this piece of equipment and stuff, and then we finally get the lowdown on everything we've been wanting to know.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Picard says the Treaty of Algeron was a Federation agreement to never develop cloaking technology. And Picard is just like absolutely appalled at Pressman's guile. And Pressman is like, that's enough. No more talking. I'm taking control of the ship. But 0 people come to his aid, which also reminds me of what artifice power really is. Like power only works if enough people buy into it. Right. But the minute everybody turns on the powerful and goes, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. Suddenly there's just like one sad little person. And that's what ended up happening.
This is why the school of thought from Captain Jellicoe is not effective in the long term, because blind obedience is not the same as loyalty.
No, it's not.
Blind obedience is not the same as loyalty, as at least as far as how effective it is. And it can only get you so far until there's, if you surround yourself with a bunch of yes men who follow you just because you're the most powerful or charismatic or whatever, you can easily be displaced by the next most powerful or most charismatic, whatever. But when you have loyalty and you have this history of trust, it's really hard to break. I mean, Riker's acting super sus, but Picard trusts him. And even when Picard was acting sus, Riker trusted him. The crew trusted. Even when Picard was, kidnapped by aliens and then replaced by an imposter who was doing all kinds of crazy stuff on the ship, it took like days before people were like, something's not right with him. I think we should like look into it. It took days. And a lot of them were still hesitant even to approach him and to be like, you're not really yourself because of the trust and that long history. And, it's just something that I think about a lot as far as reputation and how our reputations are one thing that we are fully responsible for, one thing that we curate throughout our lives, one thing that if you lose it, it's really hard to get it back.
Yeah.
And all of this just wraps into it for me, because I know I have a lot of people who will be in my corner and who will be on my side and who will support me. Even if I do something wrong or make a mistake, people who know me and love me are going to give me a second chance. They're going to hear me out. You know what I mean? And it's because we have that trust built up that I know I'm not going to fall into the blackness, into the void. I know I'm going to have a safety net. I know there's going to be people there for me. But I also know people in my family, for example, who don't have that safety net, who burned every bridge. And I feel like people like Jellicoe and people like Pressman throw around their weight and burn a lot of bridges. So that's why when he was like, I made you and I can break you, I was just like, with what stick?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you've got this head of intelligence behind you, and 4 other people who know what you're doing, but you don't have an army of people who trust you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that like what you say resonates with me so much, because I've gone through stuff like that as well with people who have like, you build up trust and loyalty with them. And if they make a mistake, you hear them out and you're there for them. But like the 15th or the 20th or the 25th time they do that same thing, you're like, okay, yeah, like I'm kind of done now. And you've got like years of backlog of like, this is why you're no longer in my life, because you've behaved like this over and over and over again. You've lost that trust, right? But that trust is very, very important. And I think you're right. Like people like Jellicoe, people like Pressman, they throw their weight around and they think they're very important. And what you've got over there is a nickel of power, and it's not that big, right? Like you're an admiral in Starfleet. Like that seems kind of important. But once you fuck up bad enough a few times, people are like, yeah, no.
Once you get court-martialed, you lost all that.
You lost
but
all
if Picard
that,
got court-martialed,
time you spent building that up.
Yeah, if Picard got court-martialed tomorrow, everybody would still be on his side.
But it'll be like, it's got to be some sort of misunderstanding, some sort of confusion, some sort of, the top secret person must have gotten their information mixed up or something, right?
Absolutely.
Now, not only, but here's now where we start getting some answers as to what the F is going on. It's not just a cloaking device. It's an extra cool cloaking technology. It changes the structure of matter. So a ship using this cloaking device can pass through normal matter. So
basically, it's like the technology in the next phase. That's what happened to Ro and Geordi, is that they were phased, but also could pass through items, which is crazy and so cool. And I'm here for it.
Totally. So they basically figured out that the intercooler levels got too high and it blew the entire relay system on the Pegasus. And that's what happened 12 years ago. When the plasma was like vented into space and ignited, it created an explosion large enough to look like the ship exploded, but really it had been cloaked during the like plasma explosion.
Right before the explosion, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like that's why there was nothing left of the ship, because it was there just cloaked. Now the ship was like
it did drift like they thought.
It was a drift and drifted through the sector in a phased state. And when the ship passed through that particular asteroid, the cloak failed and it decloaked halfway in the rock, resulting in half of the ship like rematerializing in the asteroid.
Crazy.
It's like, oh God.
Such a great explanation.
Way, I was just going to say the same thing. Such a good explanation. Where you're like, damn. Okay, they scienced the shit out of that.
They really did, and they left no confusion. Like at the end, we're not going, but how, but why, but how? We're just like everything was answered. Everything was answered, which feels really good, because sometimes, we had that episode a little while ago, Attached, where we were like, this is nothing but plot holes. Like none of this makes sense.
None of it makes any sense.
This episode is the opposite of that episode. Everything makes sense. Everything
perfect sense.
And even Picard said that as soon as Riker said he has a cloaking device, Picard was like, aha, it all makes sense now. And he started saying, that's why this was top secret. That's why no one knew about it. That's why he said, because this is illegal. And Pressman is like, this has kept us behind the curve for 60 years, kept us in a straitjacket. We should have been developing this technology. And Picard is like, it's kept us in peace for 60 years. What you're doing is illegal. Yeah. And it's not okay. And I have to say that this is actually a really good question that I kind of wish we could have a little more time on, because they should have a cloaking device. They absolutely should have that. I think they should have that. I don't know why they don't have that.
Girl, I'm gonna wait till final thoughts, but I'm with you on that.
I put that in my final thoughts too. I was
hate Pressman, but also he's not wrong though.
But he's not wrong.
We should have this,
but he's not wrong.
His methods for going about it were really shitty. But yeah, okay. So they end up like connecting the cloaking device to the Enterprise, and it works. Now, for the first time ever, we see the Enterprise cloak like a Romulan ship, so it made the sound effect. But did you also notice there was like a glittery effect too? That like the Enterprise like glittered right before it disappeared. I was like, ooh, glitter! Like I was so excited.
I didn't notice that.
My little girlish heart. I was
I didn't notice that, but I was so stuck to the TV as the ship passed through the asteroid, and you just see layers and layers of rock. I mean, it's the science nerd in me. I'm like, ooh, layers of rock.
Well, see, I actually thought this was hilarious, because I thought that the way that they tried to make the interior of the rock, it looked kind of like plasma. And I was like, Usually the inside of a rock looks exactly like the outside of a rock, but how are you going to put that on a screen?
Unless it's a geode, which would be extremely confusing.
Unless it's a
because
geode,
the outside of a geode looks crystalline and cool, but the inside is like amazing. So if they would have done that, you would have been like, is this the same asteroid? You know?
Can I tell you my little childhood heartbreak regarding geodes? One of my neighbors gave me this beautiful geode when I was a kid. It was like a big one. And I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. So I was like obsessed with it, right? So and the outside of the geode just looked like a rock, like a gray fucking rock. So anytime we went on like road trips, I'd be like, pull over, there's all these gray little rocks all over the side of the road. So I was like collecting them all in a little bucket. And my parents are like, what the F? Like Andrea's in this weird like rock collecting phase or whatever, right? And then I'd get home and like smash them up with a hammer. And then they just look like gray rocks on the inside. And I just felt so ripped off because I was like, I thought they all would look like geodes. I mean, I was like 7.
That would be amazing if rocks all look like geodes.
I was like, I never want to see another rock again.
Like, I know. So sad, little baby Andrea.
I know
your rocks turned out to just be rocks.
I know they were just rocks. They were not sexy, cool rocks, but yeah. But yeah, I will say
this rock does look like an asteroid. It's just very cool.
I loved it. Very plasma-y, but I was like, to the show's credit, they did kind of go right through the lava part where the Romulans had like melted the rock. So maybe that's what that was their interpretation of like melted rock. And I did think it looked kind of cool, like how they like came out of it, where it's like the plasma-y like lava just sort of like gradually sort of went away and then they were in space.
It faded from the center out. It did like a fade out from the center out. So that way the center was clear before the sides were clear. So so it really felt like they were coming out. Like that visually was like, yes, they are coming out into space. Yeah. And you just see like space show up and the asteroid field there. It was so cool.
It was really
then,
cool.
For the first time ever, we get to see the Enterprise decloak. And you're
right in front of the Romulans. And Pressman was like, are you crazy? But Picard's like, no, we're going to be as honest as possible with the Romulans.
Because the truth is going to come out to everybody very soon.
Yeah. And I was like, is it though? Because this is all going to be put away very quietly by Starfleet intelligence, but whatever.
Or is it? It could be before because only 4 people knew about it.
That's true.
But now everyone on the bridge knows about it. And Picard's not going to sweep it under the rug because he's Picard.
He's not a sweeper.
And he could have easily, they could have phased out and just pieced out. And the Romulans would have been like, wait, where's the ship? And they would have been so confused. And they could have done that and nobody would have been the wiser.
Yep.
And they could have blown up the asteroid. They could have done a lot of things.
They could,
But he chose to keep everything out in the open. He decloaks in front of the Romulans. He tells Worf to send a message that they're going to be contacted by Starfleet soon about this incident. And then they leave. And Picard's just like, everyone's going to know the truth. And he's like, Worf, put him under arrest for, these illegal activities. And Pressman's like, oh yeah, I'll get you. I've got friends in high places. And Picard's just like, yeah, you're going to need them. Like, keep those friends.
I thought was great. Also, Riker never gets off the moral high ground. Like, take a break from the moral high ground for 2 seconds, Riker. He's like, I will also have to be placed under arrest. Why?
Because he was also a part of it.
I know.
He was a part of the whole conspiracy.
You were very much trapped by orders. Like, you really couldn't do anything else. Okay, so I get it. Also, he does tell Worf, Picard tells Worf to hail the Romulan ship and send them a message saying that their government will be receiving an account of what happened here very shortly so that everybody can be on the same page. And off they go. Yeah. So Riker and Pressman are taken away by Worf. And at least that's the last we see of Pressman, thank God. But Picard does come to visit Riker in the brig. And Riker is like, I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions. And it looks like his conscience had been eating him alive this entire time. And
for 12 years. Oof.
12 years, but especially since seeing Pressman come back and be like, the Pegasus is still out there. It's like, oh, fuck, this whole thing I had hoped was behind me is now in front of me again. And like, I don't know about you, but I have been in situations where my conscience was just eating me alive. And I was like, I would rather just take the consequences for this than to have this hanging over me because I don't do deception well. And it would just eat me up. Yeah. And Picard just gave him a little friendly pep talk where and Riker's like, I fucked up bad. I fucked up real bad. And Picard's like, you did, but like,
but when it counted, you did the right thing.
You did do the right thing.
And if you keep doing that, then you deserve to wear that uniform.
Yeah.
And I still want you to be my first officer.
Yeah. And I thought it was really lovely. And I love that Picard was also honest with him, where he was like, you've spent the last 12 years building up a really solid reputation for yourself based on excellence. And your reputation will take a hit because of what happened. here and like 12 years ago with the Pegasus, now that everybody's going to know about it. However, you keep doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And
he
right,
said,
like you said,
he said, you're going to be investigated thoroughly, and there are going to be some hard questions coming your way. And he's like, all right, got it. Yeah, but you're right. Like, so he's like, your reputation is going to suffer from this, but if you keep doing the right thing.
Yeah. And you did the right thing when it counted. Yeah. Yeah. So Picard gives him this friendly little pep talk, and they go to the bridge together, and they sail.
I know. And he's like, you don't have to sit in the brig. That was just for show.
That was just to shut Pressman up.
We know where you are.
Pressman's in the next cell being like, let me out. But like, they've got sound dampeners, so we don't have to hear that dickhead ever again.
Or he's sitting there going, I have friends. I've got friends. Just wait until I find my friends. Yeah.
Starfleet command friends. Yeah. They're not going to help you. They won't help you at all. So
they're all going to disavow any knowledge of you or what you've done when they get caught.
So I had a couple of final thoughts. One, let's just get one thing straight here. The Romulans sealed your asses into an unstable asteroid. I feel like worrying about being honest with the Romulans isn't the highest priority here. It's like, you sealed us in here to die or to steal our ship. So I'm not too worried about, like, in my mind, if I were Picard, I'd be like, get us the hell out of here under cloak. And then, like, you know, warp 2 to like 2 light years away or whatever. And then we'll decloak, and then we'll just, you know, and if
I would have destroyed the asteroid, because they can still get that ship and get the technology.
You're right.
But they just can't get the cloaking thing, which is the thing they wanted.
Yeah, that's what they wanted. So
but they can get anything else. Yeah.
They can get anything else they want. But again, a 12-year-old derelict ship is like, it's so obsolete now. Now, here's the question that I have for you. On this, like, cloaking technology, we've been behind, and I say we because we're in Starfleet, apparently. We've been behind the Romulans forever because they've got cloaking technology, which puts Starfleet at a severe disadvantage. Like, why shouldn't Starfleet have cloaking technology? I understand there was a treaty, but like, we need.
Well, my question is, why did they sign this treaty? So, when I was thinking about it, I was like, I think this is supposed to parallel, like, the treaty did not make nuclear weapons, right? I think it's supposed to parallel that of like, we all agree we're going to stop developing nuclear weapons, right? Do we agree? Yeah. Do we agree? You pinky promise you're not going to make any nuclear weapons because that could destroy the whole planet. And so for me, I'm like, yeah, nobody should have those weapons, but everybody needs to have them. So that way they have a trump card so that no one else can, like, you know, threaten them with their nuclear weapons. So that's what everyone's thinking. Like, we all have to have our own gun so no one can hold us at gunpoint. So I kind of understand the thinking behind we all need this weapon, and the thinking behind no one should have this weapon. I get that. Cloaking technology to me, though, is not a weapon.
No.
It could be used in a battle, of course, but it itself is not a weapon.
No.
And it makes absolutely no sense for them to not have it. Like, I don't understand why this treaty was ever signed in the first place. Because the Romulans have cloaking devices, Cardassians have cloaking devices, Klingons have cloaking devices, and Klingons are part of the Federation. The rest of the Federation doesn't have this makes no sense to me.
Sure, we'll shoot ourselves in the foot before running a race. Like, why would you do that?
It makes no sense.
That's so
and also
stupid.
with the whole, like, this is illegal, and what you're doing is wrong. I'm like, I mean, what you're doing is wrong because it's illegal. I'm kind of on Riker's team with a bunch of people died and it's not safe. Yeah. And like, but let's just make it safe. Because obviously it can be done safely because the Romulans, the Cardassians, and the Klingons do it every single day.
Yeah, the first warp drive probably wasn't super safe, but like you like figure it out so that you make it safe. Yeah.
So the whole but like righteous indignation part of this episode is probably the one thing that makes zero sense to me. But the whole episode is great. But that one thing is like, why are we so mad at him again? Why is this a secret? Why did we even sign that treaty? I mean, and how would it cause war for us to create a cloak?
No, this is, it's not like, I think about something like the Geneva Convention, which was signed in 1925 to ban the use of asphyxiating poisonous or like gases, like biological weapons, basically, right? Because in World War I, mustard gas was new and it melts your lungs. It melts your lungs and you die. So it's like a horrific way to die. So all of these countries came together to be like, okay, in any subsequent wars or battles or whatever, we will not be using this. Like, we're just going to stick to like good old, bullets like and bayonets or whatever. Yeah. But like, we're not doing this, right? Or like, we're not doing, nuclear proliferation. We're not.
Yeah. We're not doing atom bombs.
We're not doing any of that
poisonous gas.
Yeah. We're not doing that. But the cloaking technology, it's like you said, like,
it's not a weapon.
It's not a weapon. Why don't we have this? Although, granted, Pressman's a dick. And the way he went around it was like really dickish.
But I can't imagine any other way he could have done it because it was it was illegal and blah, blah, blah.
Well, I think as the viewer, like they had to make Pressman an a-hole. They had to, right? Because if he was if he was like a really
if he was
nice,
likable in any way, we would be like, well, what's wrong with what he's doing?
Like, a bunch of people died and that's horrible, and that needs to be brought to light, right? But the technology itself, like, can be used if we just put some more research dollars into it and like get this, streamlined. Yeah. I'm with you. I'm like, guys, let's just all get cloaks. Everybody gets a cloak. Now nobody's
get a cloak, and you get a cloak, and you get a cloak.
Yeah.
Why not?
Why not indeed? Absolutely, why not?
So that was my main final thought, was like, Starfleet should have this. But then my second final thought was, man, this episode was so great. And it wasn't until us going over it where I realized they didn't even tell us what the episode was about until the last like 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. But unlike most episodes where they do this, I was completely fine with that. Yeah. There was no point where I was just like, but what, what they have a lot of times when they do this, where they wait till the last 5 or 10 minutes to tell us what the episode's about.
Yeah.
The whole episode has felt like it's been dragging on.
Yeah, totally.
Not a bunch of random tangents. And by the time they get to it, we don't even care. We're like, I don't even care why are we even here? But this was not the case with this episode. It was just so good. And you said it perfectly at the beginning of this episode when you pointed out all the reasons why it was good, because I couldn't articulate any of them. I was like, I don't know why I like it, but I just really like it.
I mean, it has stakes, and then it's got, the stakes get raised when the Romulans like seal them in. So now it's like a countdown. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it had everything. The only other episode I can think of right off the top of my head, and this is not to say there aren't any others, but this is just all I can think of right now, is the Beverly episode that I love so much, Remember Me, when she's trapped in the static warp bubble, because there's clearly something wrong. We know there's something wrong. This episode's a little bit more like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. Remember Me is a bit more like, what's going on, but we know for sure people are disappearing. So when people say like, oh, I've never heard of Data, you're like, obviously we've heard of Data. Like, how can you not have heard? Right. But it's only the last couple of minutes that we realize like she's the one trapped in the bubble and that the whole crew is working to get her out. Right. Mm-hmm. This one was, what the heck? Oh, and you know what I will say, for all the buildup and exposition, the explanation was the perfect payoff. Like, it did not disappoint at all. It was so great.
Yeah. Yeah. And we got to see Huffy Picard. We got to see Huffy Riker. We got to see like conflict in a really reasonable way. Like, none of it seemed like, why would somebody be mad at this? It was all like, yep. It just all tracked. And they had an explanation for everything. Well, why can't you just beam through? Oh, that's why you can't beam through. Well, why can't you just take a shuttle? Oh, that's why you can't take a shuttle. Like, they had an answer for everything.
Why can't we cut ourselves out? That's why. Yeah. And like, why was this so top secret before? That's why, right? Like, every question is answered. This is essentially the opposite of the series finale of Game of Thrones, where all questions are appropriately answered and there are no loopholes left open. And nothing to be angry about. So speaking from experience, guys, next week we are breaking down season 7, episode 13, Homeward. Thank you so much for geeking out with us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.